Guys, we're back with another beautiful episode of Just Context Podcast. Um, Having some wonderful conversation with based on some of the things that I guess is going on in the world. And I know we normally talk about politics, and especially lately because we're waiting for the complete determination, even though we already know who the media is elected. Janelle has brought some information to my forefront that's kind of pulling me a place where I'm very much intrigued. And I think a lot of people is dealing with what she's going to be talking about in some sense. And I'm gonna keep it real. I forgot even what the word was even called. That's how funny it is because that's how intriguing it is. And I think based on the fact that and I know where it revolves or what it revolves around. And I think it's a very good conversation topic for people to even think about and to understand, even in these times, what's really needed. So I'm gonna let you go.
All right, guys. Here we are. Episode, 18? It's crazy.
Yes, it is.
Um, yeah, so first I want to backtrack on what you just said, because we know who the people elected, not just the media. Okay. Um, so moving forward, the word that you're looking for, the phrase that you're looking for is imposter syndrome. I think this conversation has come up this week a couple times, and so that's the reason that I wanted to touch on it. I personally went and found myself a wonderful therapist since quarantine started, because, who had anything to do when we were all quarantined in our houses. So I decided that that was going to be part of my self-betterment in 2020, while everyone else was picking up baking and finishing off all the baking powder and flour and all that. So my therapist and I were having a conversation a while ago because there are some ventures that I personally would like to step into. And I think about it and I think about it and I think about it. And I always kind of come back to me not being prepared, not having the experience, not being good enough, not knowing what I'm doing. And so obviously we, had to have this discussion about imposter syndrome today. And the reason that I think that I want to talk about it even more so is because Cien and I were also having a conversation recently, where I literally was just like, you definitely are good enough. Like, this isn't a conversation that should even be happening, but I understand that where we are right now in America, where so many people are, unemployed and looking for work and sending out resumes and trying to figure out, like, can I step out of the profession that I'm in? Can I do something different? Can I use my creative juices? Can I do something that I've always wanted to do but never did, or never had the time to do? And so there's just a lot of change this year in everyone's lives. And I've had, people in my life back to back who doubted themselves when they first started doing something. And, I'm always there to kind of give people pep talks and stuff, but like, I'm really crappy at doing it for myself. Um, so, my therapist is wonderful in that, although I'm a stubborn person, so it might take some time. Um, but I do want to cover the topic of imposter syndrome, just because, like I said, I feel like at this point in time there are going to be so many Americans out there who are dealing with this, and I mean, I also don't want to limit this to America, because other countries and other citizens deal with this on a regular basis. However, I think it's just more widespread at this point with how many unemployment cases we have, how many people are struggling and lacking right now because of the amount of COVID cases that we have, whereas other countries have dealt with it differently and better. So I don't think that they're going to be on par with us when it comes to unemployment and looking for things and trying to start new ventures right now. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in, the entire world. I'm only speaking from what I see. But so imposter syndrome, guys, is essentially when you feel about yourself that you are not good enough to be doing what you're doing in whatever way that may manifest. In you thinking that you're, as I said, not experienced enough, or you're not good enough, or you couldn't do what other people do, or just doubting yourself, or doubting your skills, convincing yourself that you can't get the job that you applied for because you're not good enough, or you maybe don't deserve to be getting paid a certain amount of money, because you think, I've only gotten something less or something lower. Any area in your profession that you convince yourself that you're not as good or you're not good enough, that's going to be what manifests for you as imposter syndrome. Again, I think that everyone has this at some time in their life, that they kind of just have to talk themselves out of it and try to get a handle on it. But I think that this is going to be rampant right now, where you have people that are applying for jobs, and it's going to take months in the market that we are in right now for people to be, even called back for jobs, or called for, interviews. I mean, I know personally, I am a lawyer, and at certain points in my career, it has taken me, a good 6 months to find a job that both wanted me and I wanted it. So
I'm happy you said that, because you touched on something that's very important. Talking about something that you wanted and it wanted you in the same sense, because I come to realize, and this is from speaking with a lot of my peers who has been trying new endeavors, to say the least. And I like using the word trying new endeavors. And I want to get this part out for people, not to be out of context, is that there's nothing wrong with failing, right? Failure is a substance for you to realize that you have the opportunity to try again. That is one of the greatest objective of everything else, because I find myself struggling in this area personally, because not everything that glitters gold, and not everything that you touch is going to be turned into the Midas touch, where it's going to be golden, to say the least. Sometimes you have to, I don't want to use the word bounce around. I want to use the word take the time to evaluate what you really, really, really like. Because sometimes you got to remember, what you do got to give yourself gratification. Don't do something because it only benefits you in one way. Find something that benefits you and completes you. And I feel like that's the season that COVID has kind of forced upon us. And the word force is a very dangerous word there, but it is danger that we're dealing with COVID. But I would say this: if this is not one thing that I've learned from the human race, is that when we've given these obstacles for us to underachieve, we've learned how to overachieve. Because I'm happy when Janelle used the word imposter syndrome and what it really means. Because I would say this: in the beginning of COVID, when everyone technically was getting furloughed, and it was like, okay, I'm working here, I'm working there. Then they get to the point where the company's like, okay, guys, this is the final notice, and you really don't know what else you're going to do. And then you start to think about the industry that you probably divulge yourself in the last like 10, 15 years being taken away or changed. And I guess I can talk to some of my friends who are engineers that I've spoke to. I'm going to use for electrical engineer or mechanical engineer, to say the least, people who works on airplanes or aircraft's engines, to realize in this season that the airplanes is not flying as much as it used to. I had the opportunity to go down to Miami International Airport about a week or so ago to pick up a friend of the family, right? And normally when I go to Miami International Airport, it's swole. And for everybody around the world, swole mean that there's a lot of people moving around in different places. Just to be back in context. But when I got there, there was like 3 cars, to say the least. Before, if you go into Miami International Airport, it's a fight to drop someone off or to pick them up. But to take it back out of context, this is what we're dealing with. So we have all these people finding different niches in things that they never thought they would have been good at. But come to realize, based on what they've done in their previous life, right? And I'm not saying previous life they're dead, but in their previous experiences, that they've learned certain trades in the sense that helps create their personality over a period of time, that makes the new endeavors that they do work for them. And I'm gonna use, for example, a friend of mine take up stock. I mean, an engineer. He took up stocks trading, and I remember introducing currency trading to him, and he was like, "No, I don't like that." And I was like, "It's fine. I mean, because I don't trade stocks." And I looked at him. I was like, "You know what? You're gonna be good at trading stocks." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. I mean, I'm just gonna do this as a hobby. I can't wait for the industry to start pick back up. I can't wait to be traveling back all over the world. You know, what I mean, I love it. I can't wait to see another plane engine again. I just can't wait to crack one of those wrenches, right?" And as he's got into the stock market, is how great he's starting to realize he is. Then the conversation is switching like, man, I don't even know if I want to go back to working on engines. And I'm like, so what else are you trying to do? And he's like, you know what? Based on me doing this, and me starting to understand how the certain business endeavor has run, it's taken me into new places. And it's funny because it's places that is never thought that would have been explored if the world never would have given us this great of an obstacle, right? So in the sense, you're looking at it like, yo, this is impossible for me to do these things because you never had the opportunity to put your mind to it. That's the most insane thing to realize about me learning, as you know, said about the imposter syndrome. Because I find myself even trying new endeavors, things that I guess people, I guess, saw in me in different places, or little things that I thought was handy enough to do. Like, for example, I'll be like, hey, I got the truck here. We're still in COVID season. People are getting Amazon packages left, right, and center. Sometimes they get enough packages, they can't get rid of all their boxes. You know what? Pay me a fee, and I can pick them boxes up for you and throw them away. But it's showing you that not because you don't have the resources to do something else will give you some gratification to do what you're doing. And to be the honest thing is, normally, not saying I don't have a problem doing the hard work, but just even standing out there doing the boxes and doing something different, I was like, man, I'm getting my exercise in, so I was counting my steps on my watch. You know what I mean? And then when he told me to drink water, I stopped and drank water. So I was like, I'm actually accomplishing multiple different things by doing one thing that in one sense I really didn't want to do. So I was feeling so gratified by doing just the smallest things. And you'd be surprised to think that, you know what, I would never enjoy these moments from, I'm going to say something dangerous, guys, from doing manual slavery, right? 'Cause that's how I feel sometimes when you're out there working in the sun and it's hot. But to sit there and, it gave me a little bit of fun. And to have my son be like, Daddy, I want to help you, felt great, because now I'm getting paid, right? I'm counting calories, so that means I'm losing weight in every form or shape, and I'm bonded with my son. And then hopefully, in the same sense, I'm teaching him a little bit of what hard work is. He may can't do all of it and take all the boxes and throw them inside of the truck, but if he just by pulling one or two, I feel like we're doing something else. And to realize that, you know what, it's not to be an imposter. It's to realize, you know what, you're really good at something if you try your hardest. And I feel like that's one of the greatest things I've learned in this season. But you continue. I know I kind of took over for a little bit.
Um, well, yeah. So, putting things back into context, I want to give more of the legitimate definition of imposter syndrome, because I said it, based on my words, on my experiences, and how I internalize it. So imposter syndrome, readings directly from the internet, Google is our best friend. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Another site says imposter syndrome describes feelings of severe inadequacy and self-doubt that can leave people fearing that they will be exposed as a fraud. Usually in their work lives, it can affect anyone regardless of their success level. Which I think that part is something that we also need to understand. It's not just the quote unquote little people, right? Like everyone has these feelings of inadequacy and not being good enough, or not being experienced enough, or am I really worth this amount of money, or am I actually bringing something to the table that is unique. And so as I was saying, like, I had to have this conversation, and I think I have to have it, a few times with my therapist to get over it. But ironically, I have had this conversation with other people, and they always say that you are your own worst critic, right? So when you're looking at yourself and your skills, you're always going to come down on yourself the hardest. I mean, it's the same as when you're looking in the mirror, right? Like, I need to lose this 10 pounds, and other people are looking at you like, what are you talking about? You look great, right? But so for, this entire year, I've had people popping up in my life. I shouldn't say popping up. They've been in my life, but popping up with this concept of imposter syndrome. And, just me having to kind of put reality back into them, right? We see each other in a different light than how we see ourselves. So, I had a friend that went to, med school, finished, came out, got, experience at one of the busiest hospitals in the area. And then when it came to opening her own practice, it was like, well, how do I do that? I don't know if I should. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'll be good at it. I don't know if people will come to me. I don't know, it was just so much, so much of like doubting herself. And, even when it came to weeks later, when, it was a matter of like, all right, I'm going to do this, but like, how do I charge people? Like, what do I charge? And it was like, girl, like, you whole ass went to law school. I mean, to med school. Like, you are a whole ass doctor. Like, you're charging for your time and your education and the things that you know that the average person doesn't know. So, whereas she, really was undercharging herself, and I had to kind of let her know, like, don't do that. Like, you're not only a good doctor, you are a doctor that does things that other doctors would not do. She goes above and beyond for her patients. She'll do house visits. She'll literally go and pick up medication for her patients. Like, when the hell have you ever heard of a doctor pick up their patient's medication and drop it to their house? She'll go pick up lab results and make sure that they get over to where, wherever they're supposed to get to, and bring them back and make sure that, they have a space in line basically to go and get tests ran. And like, she facilitated everything for her patients, and, drives back and forth from her day job, quote unquote, right? Because like the private practice thing is obviously new. So she's, taking patients, but not on a full-time basis, right? So she would leave her actual full-time job to go and make sure that her patients are okay. Weekends, patients are calling her at all hours of the night, and she's dealing with it. Like, you rarely find people like that who are willing to go the extra mile for their patients. And so to me, that says everything it needs to say in terms of why you should not be undercharging. These people are getting a service from you. These people are, not only paying for what you offer in terms of what's in your brain and what you paid for in a med school education, but also the service that you're uniquely providing, the service that you are providing and going above and beyond for people when other people would not. So I think that in different areas, in multiple people. I mean, I had another friend who, she's amazing at any form of artistry. She paints. She's painted like her actual wall and furniture, and like she's quick to do, anything that comes to mind when it comes to art. She's into fashion. She's made clothes before. She's into shopping, like when I say shopping, I mean like putting outfits together. So, she could full on be people's personal shoppers. And she's really good at getting things for a good price. Like she's a good bargain hunter. And I kind of just had to like convince her to start her fashion blog because it was like, well, I'm not sure I'm going to be good at it. I've never done this before. And it's like, you have the skills, you have the skill set that you need to be able to put your, what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to put yourself out there in that way. And for people to actually look at you as an authority on that subject, but people will always doubt themselves in that. And like I said, I am included.
Yeah, I mean, very, very, very well said. I've liked the fact that, in the sense of how many people are doing different things and trying these new endeavors, we've come to realize that our creative juices have gone is so deep. Like, to realize that what we can all do individually, and then when we put this nice little cluster together, what we can really accomplish. And to think that everybody thought at the beginning of how when COVID hit, that no one would be able to survive. I've found that some of the best cooks are the people who thought they couldn't cook during this season. Mm-hmm. I'm serious.
I just want to make sure that everybody realizes, so many people are saying that this was a tragedy and, it's been a disaster, but COVID gave a lot of people, a lot of the population, the opportunity to slow down and to actually do things that made them happy. Do things that they never thought that they would get a chance to do. To practice things that they would have never gotten the time to practice previously. Because, especially in the United States, we work ourselves to the bone. We work ourselves, as if nothing else matters. We're not like other cultures. We're not like, the Eastern world. The Western world is very much so, slave-minded. So we don't really take the time to do different things. And when you have, one huge part of the country being able to step back and take time to do these things, there's naturally, I think, going to be a level of brainstorming and a level of collaboration when it comes to creative endeavors, even if the other part of the country is still working, right? I was both. I was kind of working and not working because, my job clearly depends on the clients that come, right? So at times I had the downtime, at times I didn't. But essentially there were people around me that were still working and there were people around me that weren't working. And I think that it did well to facilitate that collaboration between those two sects in society.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, because I realize that people get to learn how to live by themselves in this moment. One of the best things I can say I gained from this opportunity is family time.
Mm-hmm.
because I know school has gone back. I do have my two youngest in school. My oldest is doing homeschooling. But in the beginning of COVID, one of the things that I was worrying about prior is that me and the wife work so much is that we're never going to get to spend that real quality time with the kids. They're just going to grow, and all it is that I'm just going to be seeing them for a couple of hours a day because that's how it felt prior to COVID. And I got I got more time to hang out with the kids. Like I created little sessions in this moment called Love Out. You know, the Love Out is when I turn all the lights off in the room, in my room, and we all watch TV together. And it was one of the most wonderful things I think we created. So the kids them just can't stop requesting this moment. And I was like, to think about it is like you would never think about these little things and how valuable they are if you never had the opportunity to make these things happen. And I enjoy, it. My wife is in a mental state nowadays where she would tell you she doesn't want to work for the man, based on how her other skill sets that she's acquired during this COVID period. Because you started realizing there's little things that started taking Eden. For example, she wants to do hair and she does her graphics and all her other stuff. But to see that her creative mind has jumped like levels kind of put me into a space like, you know what? Let me dig deep for any creative juices. Now I watched my youngest. She's telling me she wants to create her own little YouTube channels because she wants people to, to see how she's living her life. And I'm like, I guess your life must be that fabulous, you know. But and I guess it's a fabulous life of Teeny. Um, my son wants to get into cars. He's gathered so much more. And I would say this, not saying I didn't have him watching cars before, but in this moment, I was able to enjoy it with him. And I can explain certain things to him, different type of cars. Like, not saying he would have never found out on his own, because I guess that's one of the greatest thing about acquiring knowledge. But it's the fact that I would sit there and to realize that he likes some of the cars I like, and he could just be a daddy's boy, which I'm loving. But his favorite car is my favorite car, so I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean, Team Walkers. But it 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 was a blessing in disguise because I did kind of feel like, especially as a man, that I needed that opportunity to bond with my son. So he knows that, you know what, daddy loves you. You know what I mean? It's more than me just be going to work every day. There's more to it. And the question that we get asked, because now if I get too busy throughout the week, okay, daddy, you ain't spend no time with me. And it's like, well, and it's these are things he wasn't asking before because it was just so common for me to be gone. You know what I mean? So I guess I can acquire that the opportunity to be a better parent in this moment. Something that, not saying I didn't think was impossible, because you realize, if depends on how you're grown, if you don't got certain emotions, you will know how to give it. And you'd be surprised that the smallest details, the smallest minute details will take you from one place and place into another. And you're looking at something so minute, like it's so insignificant. Then when you take it and put it into another area, it gets so humongous. And you're like, really? Like, I didn't realize this small little thing that you say, it's not that important. In another world, it's so big. Because me talking about cars with my son is not saying it's not, to me, it's insignificant, because I'm like, I see cars every day. There's cars here, cars left, right, and center. But to him, it's like me and daddy spend time together and we talked about cars, the thing that I love the most. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to be talking about cars. And to me, that's so metaphoric for so many different things that people has developed in this COVID season, in this season, to help better our mental space. And I'm loving it. You know, um, I see people being creative, people drawing, people who I thought couldn't draw, who was giving me a twist. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess there could be some artistic value based on what you do, and then you realize that some of the people who's creative to the max need to take their creative juices into other endeavors. Because not saying you don't think you're good in that area. As I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with failing, but to realize that sometimes you've learned certain assets because that asset is just a setup for you to take you to the next level to work on something that's really going to make you shine. And I think that's one of the greatest parts that I've started to realize lately is starting to utilize all these small assets and trying to make them all shine in different ways and not being forceful, because before, I can say this, the world was so forceful. I've learned patience in this moment. And it's one thing I think COVID has taught all of us is patience. Shoot, the election is teaching us patience, so I guess they go hand in hand. But it's never to say the least. But it's very much so to pay attention to. But I'll let you go, Janelle.
So I think that, with all the good that came with COVID, so back to, imposter syndrome, I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there for the next few months at the minimum, because I mean, this thing has gone on for almost a year now. But in getting back into the labor market, we also have to take into consideration everything that's going on out there. So there's so many companies right now, big and small, that are shutting down. Restaurants shutting down. Airlines shutting down. There's so much out there that is, just being done away with at this point, that there are going to be so many employees that are displaced. And I think that COVID is ultimately going to make people have imposter syndrome because of it. People are going to be applying for jobs and not getting callbacks and not hearing from people. And, maybe even in the industry that they're in, because of all the shutdowns, they may get offered less. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to just ground yourself and remind yourself that it's a different time. It's not about you and your capabilities and your skills and what you're good at and how good you are. And if you know what you're doing and your qualifications, it's really about the time that we're in the world, but in the US, essentially, right? So I think that, granted, we do, like I said, deal with imposter syndrome regularly, but I'm going to hate to see COVID affect us imposter syndrome wise to a different degree. Because I don't think that people should be out there doubting themselves and doubting their abilities because the job market is in a frenzy right now. And it is. There are millions of people that are still unemployed, no matter what, Trump and, his people might be saying out there, about bringing jobs back. The reality of the situation is that there are still millions of people who are displaced and who are unemployed and who are furloughed and still being furloughed. Just this week, I saw, Disney furloughed another set of employees. Those are people from all walks of professions. It's not just, we think of Disney and it's like, okay, the people that like sell us food and like paint our faces and whatever the hell else goes on at Disney, right? But Disney is a huge corporation and it has so many people. I mean, I have a friend who's a lawyer that works at Disney. You don't automatically think of Disney and think lawyer, right? But there are so many different professions that are housed under the Disney corporation that we're not even like acknowledging or thinking about, that are going to be displaced and out of jobs. So I just think that when it comes to jumping back into the market, just remind yourselves that you're not a fraud. Your abilities are not defined by the job market. Abilities are not even defined by your fears. You are scared that you may not be good enough or you may not be able to compete, and I don't think that is something that you should be rooting your self-worth in, right? I guess I want to like talk a little bit about my situation. So I personally have been toying with the idea for a while now um to do life coaching. Um and every time I tell people this, they're always like, "Yeah, you'd be awesome at that." Like, you know, you're I'm I've always been that, one of those people that other people look to as being wise, right? I mean, if we're being real, I'm wise in other people's endeavors. um because like I said, when it comes to yourself, it's the hardest thing to be wise in, right? But when it comes to the life coaching, I doubt myself, and that's part of the situation of what I had to discuss with my therapist, and it's a continuous conversation. But today I was saying, how can I call myself an expert in something if there are people out there who are better at it than me? How can I call myself an expert in something if there are um, people out there who have more experience than me and who have maybe even have a degree or an award or some kind of accolades, right? um and shout out my therapist. He kind of basically broke it down to me and was just like, regardless of whether there are people out there who are better than you, it doesn't mean that you aren't as either equally good or good enough to do what you want to do, right? um then there's the concept. So I brought up Leonardo DiCaprio, which I just found out that he actually won that Oscar that everybody was talking about. I did not know that he won it. Thought he was still holding out for it. Um, but I brought that up and I was saying, everyone knows that he's good, right? He's good at what he does. People love his movies. I personally love his movies. I think a lot of his movies are bomb. I think he should have won an Oscar for Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, there's so many movies of his, right? Um, but I brought that up and I was like, everyone knows that he's good at what he does, but he didn't have the Oscar. Um, what does that say? What does that say about somebody who's in the industry who um, doesn't have the accolades that other people in the industry have? Um, and then, he was also bringing it back to the fact that some people just have better press.
No, that is definitely a fact. But I would say this. It's sad to say. I think that a lot of people haven't given Leonardo credit where his credit has really due, based on the fact that if you look at some of the movies that Leonardo participated in, they're lifelong movies. And I mean, I can throw there's just one out there that's never to say the least. It's Titanic. But you can go back to movies where um, he's playing with your emotions or my emotions with my mind, because in Inception was a very 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 good movie for me, because I felt like I've seen him in so many different flavors that he blew my mind so much. Even when he was not even a star or not even a co-star, when he was just a regular actor in a movie, and I'm going to use Django for example, right? Because if everyone realizes he's famous meme that everyone uses is from a movie that he's not even the star in, right? He was just playing just a regular character, to show you how beyond his time in the industry is. I felt like it was overdue, but I'm very big on it. I've come to realize this depends on. I don't want to be disrespectful to say who's I mean, rear end you may decide to put your lips on to get where it needs to get to, but and I'm happy because I'll say this: Leonardo, for him being a Caucasian actor, have stuck with the black community for the longest time. He's never shied away from being around the black actors. He's always embraced it. Some of the and it's proven, and I don't want to throw that card out there because it just hurt to say that. I feel like that's one of the reason why I've come to understand that there's certain roles that people have to play to gain these nominations, right? And I don't want to sound disgusting, so I'm maybe taking myself out of context by saying this. If you see any black actresses win or actors win any award, it's because they're acting the role that someone thought that was authentically black.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No, for sure.
and
Though I mean, they talk about it all the time. Like some black people can't get roles if they don't act, black enough. That's definitely a thing.
and that's the sad part about it. And then I will say this: it goes the same thing for Caucasian people as well. There's a certain criteria that they have to meet. Um, that and I don't want to say the least why they win these awards. Um, but that's my personal opinion with the reward system. I think I've listened to Andrew Yang speak on something earlier today when it comes to titles and trophies because he kind of addressed something with UFC, and I'm not to take it out of context because he made something sense. He says that Dana White controls the UFC. He controls the matches for the UFC, right? He also controls the purse, which is the amount of money they make, and he also controls who is determined to be a championship or who's determined to be a champion. And he was like, at that rate, there's too much control for one person in that organization. You know what I mean? So he can basically make you a star if he wants to make you a star, not based on your talent or your criteria, about just his personal opinion. And he's like, according to Andrew Yang, that's something that needs to be stripped. I'm not saying he can't be the head of the UFC, but he can't really be so big of a part of all that determination because now people is gonna get undermined. You know what I mean? So he was basically saying that, for example, you technically need another organization to determine who the championships are, who's the better rank, and these can fall under the UFC banner, right? But one person should not be in control of it, and it talks about what's going on in the world, is that I feel like we're chasing down one person's narrative where it should be all inclusive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, I think that, I mean, a lot of that goes towards society and what they deem as successful and acceptable, and also what you were taught. So, like, that was another thing that I was talking about with my therapist. Like, coming from a Caribbean household where you're taught, like, if you don't get the A, like, nothing else matters, right? Um, it's difficult for me to look at success in terms of my own definition or a looser I guess boundary around the terms of success, right? um, when I think about success, I think about the people who have the accolades, who have the awards, who have the experience, who have the degree. And I emphasize degree a lot because that's how I was taught. Growing up, my dad was just, I don't care what happens as long as you get your degree. um, so with so much emphasis on having to have the degree and having to be the best, have the best GPA, get all the A's, get all the awards, get all the recognition. That is what I've always emphasized as success. And so when I look at myself and I'm not in that position, I don't have the quote unquote recognition. I mean, honestly, it's by choice because I don't really compete for awards. I don't put myself out there to have the quote unquote recognition. I think that's also something I'm working on, because I'm a fairly behind the scenes type of person. I don't really like recognition. I don't really like being in the public eye or having people look at me. And I've always been that way. I've always been the type of person that's like, let me do me. You go over there where all the cameras are, and I'll just be over here in the background. And like, once you realize that, I'm actually doing as good as you, it doesn't take away from the fact that like the cameras weren't on me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really like all the attention. So that's also something I have to work on in putting myself out there, because this is a society that wants you to have the attention, that wants to see what you're doing, that wants to see your face, that wants to hear your voice, right? Wants you to be in everybody's faces and showing them what you're doing and how you're living, or how you're doing your job, or prove in some concrete audio visual way that you're there. But as far as, not having the recognition, not competing for the awards or having awards, or even as much as, having the degree. So like in life coaching, you don't actually need a degree to be a life coach. But in my mind, I'm like, well, how can I call myself a life coach if I don't have a degree? Like, how does that make sense? I mean, at least a degree in psychology or something. Like, how can I just go out there and tell people that I'm a life coach without having a degree or awards, or you know what I mean? Like, I just look at that and I'm like, how can I say that I am qualified for this? But yet I am still the person that doles out advice at every turn and helps people with their lives. So another area that I was talking to my therapist about was like chefs. So I watch a lot of Top Chef and Master Chef. Those are some of my favorites. And so I was saying, the people who come on these shows, like for example, Top Chef, they come on these shows to cook for Gordon Ramsay. They come on these shows to cook for Padma Lakshmi. They come on the shows to cook for Tom Colicchio, for all of the huge people, right? Wolfgang Puck, like all of the huge people, even the guest chefs, right? They're all James Beard Award winners. They're all, they have their own restaurants. They're, super well known. They're the top of the top, the people to be in the industry. And the people who are cooking for them are in hopes of getting a Top Chef award or a Master Chef award, right? So it's like, yeah, I can look at them and say, okay, they won the competition, but they're not like a top chef. They're no Gordon Ramsay. They just won a competition. And he looked at me and he was just like, but some of that also comes down to how much press these people have. The Gordon Ramsays and the Padma Lakshmis of the world, they have the press, they have the notoriety, they have the people who are looking at them, and every move that they make. Whereas there are some people out there who can cook just as good as Gordon Ramsay, but nobody knows about them. So, it's also breaking down the fact that just because these people have, the accolades that you may not have, or the experience that you may not have, doesn't mean that you can't do what they do. And that is where I struggle, and I think a lot of people struggle. But I wanted to emphasize this topic just because, like I said, I think we're going to be rolling into an area in this country where the majority of people are going to be suffering from imposter syndrome.
And I would say this, I'm happy you state something about the oh man, I forgot what it's called now. Life coach. Correct. To the sense that, when you state that you don't have a degree in life coaching, you start to realize a lot of stuff that people are technically good at nowadays is stuff that they don't have a degree in. That is so crazy. Like you study for 4 or 6 years in college to acquire something, to realize that, you know what, I should have looked in the other area. And in the sense that you started realizing that you find things that you love, because even for yourself, I can say this: when you're going to college to get your law degree, there are things that you love about law, and there's things that you hated. I guess in a sense, because it's just technically human nature, right? But I would say this: a lot of the stuff that you like about law is maybe one of the reasons why you like life coaching so much.
I I don't know that I've ever actually thought about that, but probably. There are certain areas of the practice of law that I hate, and certain areas of the practice of law that I like, and um, I'm not. Um, I think, like I've said it before. One of my first jobs out of law school was working with the Department of Children and Families, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things about that job that I really, really hated is that because I was working for the department, like I was a lawyer for the department, which essentially meant I was like a lawyer for, the quote unquote government, right? But it's not really the government. um, it was still, working in the quote unquote best interest of the child, right? Um, but one of the things that I hated about it is that there were so many rules on who I could talk to, and if they had representation, and if they had their own attorney, and if they had guardian ad litems, like I couldn't just, see a parent or see a child who had an attorney in court and just talk to them on a one-on-one level and like give advice or steer them in a certain direction or, help them understand things. Like there were so many times where I would walk out of a courtroom and like I would want to sit down with the child and be like, this is what's happening. This is what's going on in this case, and this is, what needs to happen. Don't feel like you're alone. Like, if you have any questions, ask me. And honestly, that's what's supposed to be happening, especially when it comes to the guardian ad litem and the guardian ad litem attorney. But, being realistic, that doesn't always happen. We have, a ton of people on our caseloads, and after one case we jump right into the next. Like sometimes there's no breaks in between. The judge will literally expect you to just recite 10 cases one right after the other, right? So sometimes you don't get the opportunity. And so because I was there as an adult in the courtroom with empathy towards these children and their situations, I would want to have some kind of human contact and conversation with them, and I wasn't allowed to. um just like I said, ethically. And the same thing with the parents. If they had their own attorneys, I could not speak to them, right? But sometimes you really just want to say, like, hey, things are going to be okay. Like, just do XYZ, just outline, this plan for yourself. Like, if you need help with something, like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, just that having that one on one conversation.
Yeah, just to give them that small little insight, like as I said earlier, this little small thing that's going on here, if you fix this, will make so much of a greater change in your life.
Yeah.
I would say this, and I'm happy that our life experiences pre-COVID, right, is kind of determine what our mental future will be looking at, and I'm happy for that more than ever within this year. I think people's creativity, and I would say this, as I say, guys, don't be afraid of failing. You're gonna fail. You will fail in things. You know what I mean? Just as much as Janelle said that when she worked for the Department of Children and Family is not something she liked, but it's for her to see where her heart small desires may lie in like instead of hurting someone's family, you can make a small difference in changing it. I ain't gonna lie, Janelle, I'm gonna let you continue, but that narrative kind of touched me. That's why I want to jump in. Continue.
um yeah, I mean, jumping off that topic of life coaching, I mean, that's something that I'm still toying with because I still, have those issues of trying to um believe in my mind, or what they say, changing the narrative, right? Or developing a new script, right? Because it's just like I said, that's not the way I was raised, and that's not how I've ever thought about things. Like things are very structured in my mind, and it's supposed to be a certain way, and that's not really life anymore. I don't know if it was ever life, honestly, but I know that I was made to believe that it was, right? So at this point, I'm still trying to, wrap my mind around the fact that there are alternate ways to do what you want to do. You don't have to have the degree, as you said. Some people don't even really have like the experience, but they're really talented, right? Um, and just looking at, like, for example, like artists, some people don't have that degree. Some people didn't go to art school to have that technical training in it, but they're
Mhm.
really good at it. Like, you see people and their art and it's like, wow, like that's awesome. Obviously, if they had the technical training, they would probably be like, even 100 times better, right? But like,
Yes, I
that.
agree. And you know what, in general, you have to remember, and I'm not saying this, a lot of people did stuff for financial endeavors more than personal gain. You know what I mean? It's because, for example, say I'm an excellent dancer, but my mom and dad's gonna tell me that there's no money in dancing. You know what I mean? And come to find out right now, they're on Instagram, probably having 1 million people following them, watching them dance, and they're getting paid for something that they've been told their whole life was not worthy of giving a shot. You see a lot of people who are musicians who didn't think that um, their music would have been heard. And shoot, I think I've been hearing a lot of musicians now that I'm happy I had the opportunity to hear, so I can not hear them again, to tell me that, you know what, music was never really your thing. Based on the time frame you probably been in the studio, you may be a better producer than a musician at this moment. And you started seeing that there are other people who've done that. Like, you've realized, like, I'm gonna say people like Neo. Not saying Neo is an excellent artist, but Neo come to realize that one of his greatest gifts is a songwriter. You know what I mean? He's made more financial gain off being a songwriter than he's really been off being a regular entertaining musician singing himself. So it comes to show you that you be surprised what you're really good at when you didn't think you'd have been successful in this area. Yeah. And then look at Rihanna this moment. Rihanna is a big musician, but if you look at what Rihanna has been making so much finance from, and something that I personally support, because her Fendi brand is grown to a whole nother level. I like the image. I like the direction. Some people may beg to differ, but I guess I'm entitled to my own opinion. But I like the direction she's going, and to see that her journey started as a musician, right? Now she's basically taking over the fashion industry. Like at this point, sometimes they ask Rihanna, "Are you gonna put music out?" She's like, "Yes, but I've been focusing on my Fenty brand." Look at, I mean, I don't even want to highlight Kylie too much, but Kylie stepped out from her Kardashian clan doing makeup. She didn't even think that was gonna. None of them think that was gonna work. If you left it to the mom, she'd have told you sex was the most important object to sell, and that's a fact. Kylie selling makeup, not bikinis. She ain't modeling. She's selling lip gloss and eyeliners. You'd be surprised by doing something different, something unique, something I'm gonna use the word unorthodox. May put us in a space that we need to be. Um, I'm gonna say this, if there's one thing I've learned about this episode, is that people should not be afraid to be creative. Never the least. Like, if you feel that creative juice inside of you, please let it flow, guys. Don't turn the pipe off. Let it flow. You'd be surprised, and let it overflow.
And don't doubt your abilities, even in the face of others.
Yeah,
And don't doubt your abilities, even without the experience and without the degrees and without the awards, because there are definitely people out there who are amazing without all of those things. Um,
fact.
it's just tough. like I said, but it's something to work on. And as they say, you fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
So until you get all the press that everybody else has, you fake it till you make it.
Yes, I ain't gonna lie. I fully guarantee. I met a millionaire who told me he wasn't a millionaire. He only had $100 in his pocket, and I was like, so why are you faking the other way? He's because look, if everybody knows I'm rich, they're gonna be harassing me for our money. When they think I'm broke, they would just leave me alone. And I'm like, what? But secretly rich. Well, you know, what I mean, that was just an oxymoron for the story, guys. Now, Janelle, I think we've had a wonderful episode. Is there anything else we would like to get out before we go? And guys, as we said, the president elect is Joe Biden. There's no way around it. Just so we can put that back in context. So I think with all the craziness going forward, we're just gonna learn how to move forward. I want to get it off my chest because I had a wonderful conversation earlier. But Janelle, is there anything else you would like to get off before we go?
Nope. Come back next week for another episode. Check out last week's episode on the lead up to Biden and Kamala Harris being elected. Like, comment, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Catch us on Anchor, catch us on YouTube, Apple Music, Google Podcast, sorry.
Yeah.
Spotify, all the good stuff. Come back next week.
Yes, please, guys. And remember, just to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend, just to tell a friend. Peace.